Next question. It's from Sandy in Fort Myers. If I wish to no longer be in Chapter 13, what is the procedure used to dismiss the case? It's pretty simple, Sandy. If you have an attorney, you call the attorney and say, look, I no longer want to be in Chapter 13. My plans have changed, my agenda's changed, my direction has changed, and therefore I want to dismiss the case. Under the Bankruptcy Code, you have an absolute right to dismiss a Chapter 13. The only problem you could run into is, let's say, for example, before you were in a 13, you had filed a 7 and converted to a 13. But what happens then is that in the 13, you can't just dismiss it. The court probably is going to send you back to the Chapter 7 because that's where you started. So if you have any doubts about it, you always want to start as a Chapter 13, and then what happens is you have the absolute right to dismiss the case. Got to remember, it's a voluntary repayment plan to your creditors. Now, if you go into the Chapter 13 and you want to say, hey, I'm done, I don't want to be here anymore, and you dismiss the case, well, then it's kind of like going back to square one, where you started the case and you're saying, all right, what happens to all these creditors? They're all still out there. Well, what happens to all the payments that I made to the trustee? Well, the trustee is obligated to make those payments to the creditors. So you're going to get credit for those payments, but if you go back to square one, you may find you owe more than you actually did when you started, depending on which creditors come after you. Now, I've seen cases where we've gone through, something happens, we dismiss the Chapter 13, and nobody ever bothers these people again. Is that possible? Yes, it is. Is their credit still messed up a little bit? Yeah. I mean, I can recall one case vividly. I represented a gentleman, had like $200,000 in credit card debt, used it to pay medical bills, ran up his credit card debt thinking, all right, I'll pay this off over time. Of course, then something else happens and he can't afford to do it. Now we've got $200,000 in credit card debt. He files Chapter 13. Guess what happens? Loses his job, can't afford to make the payments to the trustee. After about a year, case gets dismissed. No one calls him anymore. I think he had to deal with one credit card. He dealt with them, made a settlement offer. Years go by, the guy calls me, he goes, you know, I never really paid anybody. I paid one creditor. And is that okay? And I'm thinking to myself, you won the jackpot, you won the lottery. Everything worked out well. But, you know, sometimes people are not so fortunate. I just remember that one case because it was so bizarre, because we had like 20 credit cards we were dealing with, and only one of them contacted him after the case was dismissed. It happens. So I can't really go out there and say yes, good, bad, no. It happens.